I've seen images and, of course, receiving greetings, or rather calling for greetings for the president from the current office. So you can see the work that he has been doing is bearing fruit. And, of course, just before the visit itself, there was a meeting at State House for leaders from the Mt.Kenya region with the president to just have a conversation, and the mobilization that was seen, you can see the impact of it. And I think the president actually spoke about it on Monday during that interview with the media houses that largely broadcast to the communities in Mt.Kenya region. And he was saying that even if people are being mobilized in a certain manner, that's how politics works. He actually admitted that it is possible to organize, because you want the president to have an audience that is listening to him. But also now, when you're reflecting on some of the projects that the president has been inspecting or launching and making further promises, some of them are projects by the national government. Some are by the National Government Constituency Development Fund, NGCDF. And I just wanted to highlight a few for the sake of the viewers. So you will see that in Laikipia, there's a Nanyuki DEB construction of classrooms. This is a project that has been ongoing. It was costing 12 million shillings. It is by the NGCDF. The president was there, and he promised additional classrooms in 5 schools, 60 classrooms in 5 schools in that region to be constructed by State Department for Housing. So that is something to think about. So a project is by NGCDF. The president comes and promises 60 extra classrooms to be constructed by the housing department, or the ministry in charge of housing. So when were those resources allocated? Remember, there's a budget policy statement that is before the House. Soon it should be having the estimate. So the National Assembly is already considering some of those proposals.
Maybe there's another supplementary budget coming, Sam. We've had supplementary budget
too.
There's 3.
So supplementary before the budget?
Yeah.
Why not?
We've had a supplementary budget just after passing...
For the current financial
year. We've passed one right after passing the budget.
Exactly. Right.
Anything is possible.
And usually it's to accommodate Article 223 expenditure, the article that allows the government to spend on money that was not allocated in the budget. But I highly doubt that you can construct 60 classrooms outside budget. So this, I mean, how we do procurement, who decides the need? Is it just a call from the area MP, from the residents themselves? How is that taken forward? There is a project, tuition block, Narumoru Township. So the cost was 15 million shillings. It's already complete. It is financed by the NGCDF of Kieni County, constituency rather. And the president promised an additional 10 million shillings for new classrooms in that area. Then also there's Narumoru ESP market that was financed in the financial year 2023-2024, costing 150 million shillings. It has been ongoing. The president said that it will be complete within 2 months. But there are so many other projects that you see there that have been sponsored by the national government, including Nanyuki Modern Market. There's Nanyuki Affordable Housing, and he made a promise that an extra 1,000 units will be constructed under the affordable housing program. There was a promise he made some time back when he went to Nyeri County. There is a construction that was ongoing for affordable housing. Initially, the houses were supposed to go up to 3rd floor. He appeared and he said they should actually now go up to 5th floor. By the time I was there, which is sometime late last year, the project had actually stalled. No construction was ongoing, despite the variation in the project. And if you had to look at even how government conducts its procurement processes, you plan, there's a budget, you have identified the project, you finance it, then it's executed by the contractor, whoever it could be. The affordable housing program is guided by statute, the law that was passed by Parliament. It is also guided by other laws that are within the country. So when you come and make that pronouncement, how do you regularize it? Because now the onus is on the officials that are tracking what the president is saying. So much work that is costing resources. So these are just promises within Mt.Kenya region. There are other regions that have received similar promises, including the famous one for Nairobi about a machine that makes chapatis.
a million
of them.
Day.
So who is following up on executing some of these promises? And just another one here. So there is a Rumuruti electricity hub for Laikipia West. It's costing 720 million shillings. So it was supposed to be launched. The national government has promised that 4,000 people will be connected to this. Yes, many promises, but in terms of accountability and exactly how this is going to be be executed. And when you're promising additional promises, I mean, how do you keep track of that? And remember, he also spoke about some roads that are under construction. He says, Mau Mau roads, for instance. 500
and something kilometers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you ask people that are in those areas, they will tell you that actually the construction has stalled. When the president says that the construction is ongoing, tumesha zungumza na contractor within the next few weeks to months, work is supposed to continue. There's so much work to keep tracking, and even the costing of all this. Because remember, after Finance Bill 2024 was withdrawn, the budget for development was just about 700 billion shillings. Yes. So when you keep promising this, how do you finance it?
It harks back to the days of roadside declarations.
And yes, it is. It's really a very, very nostalgic return to the past, if you can call it. Because this is, and I just want us to listen to Deputy President Kithure Kindiki, who speaks of what this is about and how this should be a copy of the politics of Mwai Kibaki.
That Mzee Mwai Kibaki left us. Politics mzuri ya kusaidia wananchi. Sio politics ya kuchochea fitina, vita na migawanyiko.
Well, it could be part of it, but in all honesty, this is a political damage assessment tour coming for the first time after the fallout with former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who has done quite a lot of work in terms of decampaigning President Ruto, especially in the Mt.Kenya region, where he went back and said the region has been betrayed. And I think what the president and his team is doing right now is to see how deep does that run. And I agree with Joseph on that you know, this is really, really a political damage assessment tour. The whole question of what the impact will be, it's too early to tell. Kenyan politics are not, they don't work like in an instant way. In fact, when you look at our elections, they have been decided in the last, actually 6 months to the election date. So for those who are looking at this as the place to assess the popularity or lack of the president, it might be a bit too early to do that. Then again, I saw online, you know, the discussions about crowds, the discussion about the sizes of crowds or the music, the dancing and all that. Typically, this is what happens in this region. They really don't show their real political views in the open a lot of times. But if you look at their voting patterns as well, whether local or national, there is a tendency in Mount Kenya region to vote to punish as opposed to vote to reward or elect, which explains even the big debate on the quality of some of the leaders, whether at the MCA level, gubernatorial, senatorial. For those Kenyans who are outside Mount Kenya, sometimes you look at a gubernatorial choice, for example, and say, did you just pick so-and-so over so-and-so? Yes, because that's how it works it has worked in Mount Kenya, that, you know, you vote to punish. In the last election, the region voted largely to punish Uhuru Kenyatta and punish his project Raila Odinga. So, you know, just saying that we're going this way because we want to punish you. So these are some of the benchmarks we have to put into consideration when the country heads to the 2027 polls. Will the region be voting to punish or to reward? Because that has been the mantra in that particular region.
Yeah, and it would seem it's you know, I think just going on to that of let's gauge the political mood, but let's also try and stamp the authority. And we saw that with Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, stamping the president's authority and popularity in the region.
Ndiye mwenye mulima, aishi kwa mulima, akae kwa mulima, asitishwe na mtu yeyote.
And there was plenty of that as well, with all other politicians, who accompanied them. And it is interesting that, this also happens with the entire executive, because you see cabinet secretaries, traveling with the president as well, at a time when I remember during the first Jubilee administration, when things, better times for the now president, and who was then deputy president, and the president who said, in my cabinet there will only be 2 politicians, and it was meant to be the 2 of them. And now you see, these ones now going along with the president everywhere, and making promises, and pledging loyalty, and paying homage to, the presidency. And, it's like we're talking about, okay, these development tours, who is watching, who's counting? You were talking about, what's happened there, but in January it was in Western Kenya, February it was in Northeastern, March it was in Nairobi, now it's in Mt.Kenya. So the promises continue. I mean, even if you take a look at, for instance, in Western Kenya, sugarcane farmers, of course, there was the bonus for 150 million for those in Mumias. There was a Lurambi affordable housing project. There's a last mile connectivity project for 35,000 homes in Kakamega. Another last mile connectivity in Misiru in Bungoma, promising to connect 28,000 homes. Another one in Kijavi village in Busia to connect another 20,000 homes. There was the Nasewa EPZ that is supposed to provide 50,000 jobs. Like, it goes on. And remember, this is a week-long tour. We've talked about Mount Kenya just a little bit. This is Western just a little bit. Nairobi came with its own. But you see, like we're saying, it's the promises and it's the whole of the executive that is also accompanying him. But I think what was also quite curious about this visit to Mount Kenya is not only did it have the presidency and the cabinet, but quite curiously had the Inspector General of Police, one Mr. Douglas Kanja. And I'm not sure I've ever quite seen this happen. But not only did he accompany the president on this tour, he spoke to Wananchi. Listen.
Nimukenete nikona president ito aha namugachokia gatho nimugwenda acoke ringi nimugwenda acoke ringi niwega thengi muno na ithuĩ twautaĩra itũ ndĩguo asanteni sana. Thank you.
Also interestingly, that he speaks in the local language. I mean, this is extraordinary, Linus. Have you ever seen this? I mean, and on this side of the Constitution, on this side of
after 2010, eh?
Not pre.
Let me put it this way. It's been a downhill path since 2010 and since the actually former president Uhuru Kenyatta started with speaking the local dialect. He became the first president to speak the local language. And one time he spoke in Kajiado, that is in, it's supposed to be Maasai land, so you can imagine. But this is a new law.
Yeah.
Law, indeed, where you have the Inspector General of the police standing up to address a rally.
In uniform.
And in uniform. First of all, it tells us something about the pressure under which some of these public servants live in. I honestly don't know whether this was a voluntary moment for IG Kanja. But look at the meaning of what they were trying to do here. It was being tabled as a token of the locals that this is one of you who has a very, very important job in government. Now, if you can pick civil servants and use them that way, because that was the political communication going on there, that you're part of this government, even the IG comes from this region. So watch how... Yes. And the guy goes on to speak and nearly goes down the Kahariri path, where in a moment of gratefulness, you say the wrong things that are contrary to your job. Are you happy for seeing our president here? That is the Inspector General of the police. Yvonne?
Do you want him to come back? But then he also seems to say something that is campaigning for himself. Mm-hmm. He says, and we are doing our job all right, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So first of all, he doesn't need the popularity of the people. So when they say, yay, he is governed by a completely different standard, and that is the law. Curiously, the person who introduces him to the podium is one person we would imagine would know better.
Professor in law?
Professor Kithure Kindiki. He's a professor of law.
Exactly.
Before his ascendance to the deputy president role, he was in charge of Interior, where he constantly told us that we do not have any say or any control over the police because under the new constitution, the police service is independent of any outside control. So what was that? But Sam,
so
read us the law. lay it down, because
yes.
In legal speak, the law is very clear, and I think
the law is very clear. You just referenced Chapter 15 that guides the country on the Chapter 15 commissions and independent offices. And so the National Police Service Commission, first of all, it's one of those commissions, and it talks about the independence that comes with that. But also, if you have to look at the standing orders that guide the conduct of the National Police Service or the police officers, there is order number 5, standing order number 5, that talks about each officer shall abide by the National Police Service Code of Conduct and Ethics in regard to political activities. It continues to say that a public officer shall not, in or in connection with the performance of his duties, act as an agent for or so as to further the interest of a political party, or indicate support for or opposition to any political party or candidate in an election. Now, the more important is under 5.3, which says that a public officer, in this case a police officer, shall not engage in political activity that may compromise or
be seen.
Very important, be seen to compromise the political neutrality of his or her office.
Yeah, because perception is everything.
So you wonder, he has his own duties. He's the commander-in-chief of the police service because the service is independent and is not subject to any direction from anyone apart from the Interior Cabinet Secretary on matters of policy. And the other direction that he can receive is from the Director of Public Prosecutions to investigate a particular matter. So what he was doing in Nyeri is not clear. When you look at the statement that the National Police Service sent, they are talking about that he had been on a tour of the region, including areas like Baringo. So how did that end up in Nyeri?
No, but he did in that statement
was
go
he on top of a car?
The podium?
He had to access the microphone, of course, to be seen, because
in his official uniform.
Had he not been invited to speak, you wouldn't have known that he was actually there unless you were there to see him. So I think the biggest mistake is being invited to speak, but he did. And can you defy orders of
Actually, he should be able to, because as they have consistently told us, the police service is independent of any. But again, perception or to be seen to be. But he did say in his defense that he was there strictly in line with official duties, which includes the presidential escort unit legally tasked with protecting the president, visiting dignitaries, and that they work under the direction of the Inspector General of Police. So according to them then, he was there to personally supervise the presidential escort unit. My question is he always there to personally, in person, physically, supervise the work of the presidential escort unit everywhere the president goes? Does the Inspector General of Police accompany the presidential escort unit everywhere the president goes? That would make him a very busy man, especially considering our head of state is on the road quite a bit.
Actually, nothing prevents him from being present in a presidential function. There's absolutely nothing wrong. If he has the time, I mean, if he doesn't have much to do, he can actually do that, do the whole trail, that's fine. What is wrong and what cannot be excused, even by the National Police Service, is the fact that if he stood to be counted in these political speeches that were made today, God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. Are you happy for seeing our president here? And are you grateful for that?
Yeah.
Do you want him to come back? Thank you very much. These are political statements. What the IG did today is something no IG has done before him. Nobody, none of the, not even the single-party era commissioner of police ever did this. From Bernard Hinga all the way to Philip Abongo, nobody has done this, even under the old dispensation, where the head of the national police stands there to actually speak.
Yeah.
But I think, Lenas, this is the tragedy of our politics. You remember sometime last year, at the time that Rigathi Gachagua was facing his impeachment, there were claims he made that even IG Kanja, that he assisted to get a job and comes from his backyard, was now not even picking his calls or doing things that would favor him. So for me, IG Kanja found himself in this particular scenario as a way of indicating that in as much as there are talks that I was brought here by somebody else, niko na nyinyi. That was a silent political communications he was giving.
So he and the Maragua MP and the same WhatsApp group.
Maragua MP alisema, Your Excellency, niko hapa nitumie kama kanda ya mkono tukipeleka kazi ya Maragua na Murang'a mbele.
That's the MP.
Yes, MP ya Wamaua. His Excellency ako kwa lapi ya mwisho. Wacha tumpe nafasi afanye kazi miaka 5. Ikiisha ndio tutaangalia scorecard yake.
Yeah.
And I think, Yvonne, just to cut it short, what is interesting is, and the unfortunate situation that, is it unfortunate, that the Inspector General finds himself in, just before this tour, there was a meeting at State House of who? Cabinet secretaries from the mountain, members of parliament from the Mt.Kenya region,
governors,
principal secretaries from the region, governors also were called for a meeting, and also senior public officers, including those that lead certain institutions. At that event, I think it was in Nyeri County, there's the introduction, or you see Dr. Ngina being introduced. She's the Chief Executive Officer of the National Gender and Equality Commission. Yes. She's being introduced and say hi to the people. She was introduced again by Professor Kithure Kindiki.
An independent commission.
So when she appears there, at the backdrop of a meeting of senior public officers from Mount Kenya region, then you see IG Kanja. Is he also appearing as a senior public officer from the Mount Kenya region?
Or as Inspector General of Police of the Republic of Kenya.
The other thing is he sits in the National Security Council alongside the President, the Deputy President, the Cabinet Secretaries for Interior, Foreign Affairs. I think the CS for National Treasury was also co-opted in that team. So the others are the NIS Director General, the CDF himself. So it's rather interesting if the people that are supposed to be advising the President in the National Security Council will also be sitting in meetings that he attends so that they can come and do, now what do you call that? Is it a post-mortem of the activities that have just been held in the field? What does that become?
I think,
guys, do you remember... sorry,
it's okay.
I just don't know how to place it, but do you remember the former CJ Maraga
in Kisii?
In a roadside, standing awkwardly
in the crowd. The crowd.
That's what political pressure can do to you.
Yeah.
And remember, between Kanja and Maraga, Kanja is more exposed. Is more vulnerable. So I would understand why he would mount that truck, was it a sunroof, to actually address. And there's something else it points. There's something that is happening with our public service. It's growing weaker and weaker and weaker. There used to be someone called the head of public service, who was in a way not very political, not active out there in politics. And they used to be based in Harambee House. He used to act as a shield of civil servants, especially senior ones. That is the calling point, because you separate the public service with the political side. Remember, this political wing comes in 5 years, and then they come and go. But the public service is supposed to be there in perpetuity. Those are the people who should take care of the state. And they they were not starstruck like we have them these days with politicians. I think the latter-day public servant is too excited with politicians. An old generation commission of police, if I can use that, would not find themselves in a presidential function like that, let alone talking and addressing and making partisan statements. This takes me to the statement by General Kahariri. Even if it was accurate, he was accurately quoting the Constitution. That is not the space of the uniformed services. So there's something that is happening, the weakening of the public service, where now everything runs from the political wing of things, so that it increases vulnerability. These are people that can be threatened by even an MP because they know someone who knows the president. So they feel very, very insecure, and they'll make this kind of mistakes, like the mistake Kanja has made today, like the mistake General Kahariri made the other day by making political statements. This is dangerous for our institutions. Our institutions need to be stronger and stable so that they support each other. A strong public service that has people that have job security that is not really linked to politics, or the confidence to actually advise a political leader, for example, is so necessary, and that is disappearing. Meaning that now you invite an IG of police to speak in a rally, and they do. The next thing we shall be inviting the Chief of Defense Forces to also pop out and address a political rally. What you're watching is a very soft but very progressive destruction of institutions.
Is this taking loyalty a bit too far? You talk about how they keep popping out of the vehicles to speak. We're even seeing the politicians who are supposedly not allied, who are allied to the deputy president, popping out of those vehicles during this tour because of this thing we call maendeleo follows inafuata loyalty. The fact that nimefika, nimepledge, like what we saw with the member of parliament from Maua. But even before we continue, that there's something that I've noticed about all these so-called developmental tours. Wananchi wanaambiwa. There's no point mnapata feedback yao. I think the only feedback you get to wananchi is what we saw today, the heckling. So umesimama pale umezomewa. The question should be, kwa nini umetuzomea?
And it's supposed to be a meet the people.
It's supposed to be the people too, but they do not say anything. Wao kwa pale tu, mmekubaliana? Unapiga makofi. Or you cheer, or you keep quiet, because we saw instances of them keeping quiet wakisemeshwa. But then today we saw the booing in all Kalau and the jeers. And at the next stop, majority leader akaanza to blame his political detractors for whatever happened before. And he said all sorts of things. But the question should be, so kwa nini walikuzomea? Attacked beards.
Whose beards, by the way? And Bonyo, you are not mentioned.
Ukutajwa, but that's the thing.
Safest part of the body that was referenced.
That was referenced because it's gone south online, by the way. It's gone south online about that. But that's basically it. You're talking down at these people, and you're supposed to be there kuwasikiza, but hawasikizi. Then now look at the politics of it. Like we're talking about the member of parliament talking about how Anna pledged loyalty. But then I think before we take a break, maybe we can just listen to Governor Kahiga speaking. Akisema tulikuwa tumekumiss kidogo when the president was in Nyeri.
Tunafurahi kwa sababu rais amekuja, na hii wiki imekuwa nzuri kwa sababu tumepata marupurupu. Tungetaka awe akiendelea kuja kwa sababu akija marupurupu yanapatikana na tuna furaha. Lakini mwito ni ule ule. Tuko pale pale. Ni vizuri nikuambie.
Kwa hivyo watu wa Mlimani hawajaanza kuomba mtu.
Hawaja. Unajua ni vizuri, mimi nimekuwa, si mimi mwenyewe pia nilimkaribisha Nyeri. Na kwa sababu ni rais na mimi ni gavana na nikampokea. Lakini hata yeye mwenyewe anajua uchangamfu uliokuwako mwanzo na ule uliokuwa wakati huu kuna tofauti. Rais ni kingpin wa Kenya, lakini pengine sio kingpin wa Mlima.
Tulikuwa tumekumiss kidogo. Na tulikuwa tumeanza kuingiza wasiwasi. Si serikali ni yetu. Sasa tuiangalie watu wakitafuna na sisi tuko kando.
The first bite was today. I think he was at a Council of Governors meeting when he was asked what happened. Because the previous day, he's a strong supporter of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, critical of President Ruto and his government. But then, siku alipokuja Nyeri, alimkaribisha, and he talked about kukumis. But then now he talks about tutapata marupurupu, because for me to show loyalty na kumkaribisha, we expect itafuatwa na favors. Of course, he talks about how he supports the presidency. But that thing of tunamkaribisha kwa sababu tunataka hizo favors is something that really bothers me, Yvonne. Hii maendeleo inafuata loyalty. Because, I mean, basically, kama uwe ni kiongozi ya nchi nzima. Yeah, it doesn't matter kama unatutenga because we did not vote for you. I mean, uliposhika ile Biblia ama kitabu takatifu hapa to serve sisi wote. I mean, this is a bit doesn't make sense. And finally, if you go back to what IG Kanja did, maybe going forward, we should now start seeing OCPDs popping out of sunroofs at meetings of governors and MPs kule kwa village. So governor azungumza anasema, OCPD wa kituo cha polisi cha Kericho, simama hapa usalimia watu wako. Yeah, something like that. But then...
And OCS for MCS?
But inashukisha hadhi. Kwa Kiswahili tunasema inashukisha hadhi ya hiyo ofisi. Unapunguza ule uzito na ile heshima ambayo umepatiwa kwa hiyo ofisi.
Let's take a break because I want us to come back and talk about, the pre-tour. But I don't know if you all have noticed that there's a sudden need for everybody across all cadres to, be benevolent and to be loyal and to... I wonder where that comes from, and I wonder what's inspiring that. Because everybody is bending over backwards to pledge loyalty and to, yes. You know that other part of the body, what you do with it. I won't say much. Let's take a break. We come back. Linus is looking at me badly. It's fine. Nimefanya makosa. I'm sorry. Let's take that break. We come back.
No, it's past 10. It's fine.
Oh, it's past 10. Yeah,
what a shady.
So let's come back and we talk about that interview. My word, si mtu alifunguka. We'll talk about that when we come back.